Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Tales of Stattendor, with me, James David. So in this episode, I thought I would talk more about my writing process, especially during the period of lockdown, when I was having to isolate during the COVID pandemic. So sit back and relax, as I tell you a tale or two. So, in the year 2020, I was working as an usher at the Royal Opera House in London. COVID was spreading across the world and it finally reached the UK. Case numbers were rising and everybody was worried and panicked, and the government finally gave the order for a lockdown. I remember sheltering in place with my family in London at the time, and luckily I was given furlough by my job, so I didn't have to worry about losing my job. But at the same time, there was this big panic of, well, what am I going to do in the meantime? I didn't know how long it was going to go on for, and I thought it was going to go on for years or so. At least the news was sort of giving the impression that things were getting worse and worse. Case numbers were rising, the death toll was rising, and there was a time when I just thought, oh wow, this is getting really bad. And this was before the second wave, of course, so in a weird way, I tried not to think about it, but I realised I needed to keep busy and focus on something to keep my mind mentally active so that I wouldn't sort of stagnate during the whole sheltering. Most of the time was spent watching TV shows and films, going for the allocated daily walk with limited contact, as well as having regular meals with my family. All the while this was happening, I was jotting down ideas for stories and books and ideas just to find creative projects. I returned to painting some of my tabletop miniatures, even if they were quite fiddly at the time. I mean, I tried to do more of my Warhammer figurines, and I still can't believe how well Games Workshop did during that time. But I wanted to do something which was like a full project, not just a series of little bit projects and other such things. I wanted to do something that was truly original, truly my own, and I started working on Tales of Stattendor. At first I just called it Fantasy Series #1. I was trying to think of a name for it at the time. I went through the naming process. I transferred some ideas from my old school D&D campaign, and thus I created the world of Stattendor. I created the characters, and then I was like, okay, I finally got an idea for a comic book series. And at first I was like, well, should it be a comic book series or should I do traditional writing? But then I remembered that I didn't really find many ongoing fantasy comic books when I was younger, as I used to love reading them and collecting them, so I thought, you know what, let's try and do a fantasy series, not just a short story or novel series. So I spent some time looking for an artist over Facebook. I joined a group where it's like finding artists and creatives and whatnot, and I met Alvarex, and he does fantastic work. And from there, I started sort of visualizing how the series would go. At first I didn't really know how to write for comics, so I wrote it as like a normal story, and I sent it off to him, and he's just like, yeah, I'm sorry, I can't use this. It's not that I don't get it, it's just it's not in a comic book script. So I was like, okay, fair enough. And I looked up scripts, and I thought at the time, it's really stupid, that script meant for TV show and film. So I ended up writing Stattendor for the screen before I wrote it for comic books. And I sent it off to my artist once again, and he's just like, yeah, I definitely can't use this. So then I was like, okay, I need to read comic book scripts. So I managed to find a library, and I managed to look at different ones throughout the years. There was no real set format from what I could find at the time, and I was like, oh, this is not helpful, because I thought if I could find like a general template, this would help with me writing my story and planning it. But luckily, I decided that it was probably better if I found my own style. So I started to format it in a way that would work for me. I didn't plan the panels exactly to the letter that they should be, because I wanted it to focus more on the story aspect than on how it would look. I mean, people can vary and other people might disagree, but I decided to go what worked for me rather than what was generally and publicly more acceptable. So I thought, you know what, make it work via having the story being captivating rather than focusing on the format, if that makes sense. Once I developed my own sort of method for writing a comic book script, I did a few pages, sent them off to my artist, and he was like, yeah, this is perfect. And I was like, great. So as the pages and production were going ahead, I would see more and more of the world come to life. I would say that it wasn't exactly how I thought it would be, but in my mind, I picture it not as a comic, but as like a live action sort of thing. So seeing somebody translate it from page to panel to comic was quite a process, and I was like, oh, okay, I like it. But I obviously, of course, needed to keep writing more of it, but I let go of this sort of perfectionism I have when it comes to writing, in the sense that it doesn't have to be absolutely exactly how I want it to be or how I think it should be, but I should be able to give my artist more leeway, because I don't want to be like standing over his shoulder constantly telling him how it should be drawn and how it should be appearing. But as the production increased, I realised that there was a style to this, and I was like, oh, okay, I quite like it, because there are other comic book artists who have their own styles when drawing iconic characters, and I was like, you know what, I actually really like this. I want Stattendor to stand out, and I think that this is the best way to go. Of course, when it comes to the length of the series, ideally I want to keep it going as long as I can, but in order to do that I have to sort of pace the production of it and the funding, which is why I established a Patreon. So anybody who is enjoying Tales of Stattendor as it is, and you want to see more of it, feel free to subscribe. Any tier is good, but you know, the higher you subscribe, the more features and behind the scenes content you get. You also will get to decide on the next major storyline for Tales of Stattendor. I've worked out the first one and the second one, so if you want to see what the third one is, or if you want to decide on what the third one should be, you subscribe to the Patreon and you will be able to see the 4 options which are available. They're not like in a specific order chronologically, but they are what's happening in the world alongside what else is happening. But there will probably be a time delay between each story by like a month or so, but we'll have to see. Either way, I'm really excited for the future of Tales of Stattendor, and I'm really excited to see more and more people reacting to the comic series, because I'm trying to find more platforms to place Tales of Stattendor on to increase the reach of the series, see what people think of it, and what they would look forward to seeing as the series continues. So, in the meantime, if you have any questions or comments or anything you'd like to know about the series, drop them down below in the comments section, and I'll see you next time on Tales of Stattendor.